We are very humbled and grateful to have been chosen as a recipient of the HCI Local Giving Program.
I'm inviting you to tune in to HCI's webinar on Saturday, March the 13th.
As we are off to a very challenging year ahead of us, we look forward to working with HCI to deliver on a much needed newcomer program across Canada.
And listen to us talking about why it's important to invest in local programs and services.
This program will focus on various demographics across the nation to help with the many mental health challenges that they face. On behalf of Nissa Mental Health, we thank HCI for this wonderful gift, and we look forward to launching the program in 2021.
Don't forget to tune in next Saturday, March the 13th.
Jazakallahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sukaina Dada, and I'm the founder and executive director of Smile Canada Support Services, a registered Canadian charity that supports racialized children and youth with disabilities.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shalisa Mohammed, a senior leader at Nissa Helpline, a division of Nissa Foundation.
Our priority focus area is on the diverse Muslim communities, including refugee and new immigrant families.
We provide free peer-to-peer counseling for women across North America. Our helpline provides access to culturally competent support and assist women who are underserved by mainstream social service providers.
Currently, Smile supports over 300 families. Smile was one of the recipients of the HCI Local Giving Program, and with those funds, we will increase our capacity to support the communities we are part of.
In times like this, racialized women are often the hardest hit demographic.
Please join us on March 13th
at 7 p.m. Eastern
for a panel discussion on building an inclusive society at home.
To learn more about the current crisis, mental health, and specifically its impact on Muslim women and our families. See you then.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mashuda Lubna Sayed, and I'm an ambassador for Human Concern International, and I'll be your host tonight. So on behalf of Human Concern International, I would like to welcome you all to Canada's first Muslim charity partnership with 4 local charities. In collaboration with Nasiya, Smile, Dean Support Services, and Nissa Foundation, HCI will support mental health initiatives and programs aimed at supporting people with special needs. And that's what we will be discussing at today's panel discussion. So before I hand over to our moderator, let's meet our panel first. So first up, let's welcome Sumaya Puna from Nasiya. Welcome. We've got Shaliza Mohammed from Nissa Helpline, Sakina Dada from Smile Canada, Rabia Kadir from Dean Support Services, and of course, Mahmouda Khan, our Executive Director from Human Concern International. Our moderator today will be Tori Loretta Valentik. She's also from CBC and Algonquin College. Welcome, Tori. Terry, welcome. And I'd like to hand over to you since you'll be moderating this panel discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate, and I'm very pleased to be here. I'm so excited about this initiative and what is coming forward. For folks who are tuning in who might not be familiar, perhaps even with Human Concern International, I just want to say a little bit about HCI. This is Canada's first and oldest, by the way, international charity founded by Canadian Muslims. And as you just said, they're partnering with 4 fabulous charities, particularly aimed at mental health initiatives, programs for supporting people with special needs. And I think this is a really important discussion for not just our community, but also internationally as well. And I just want to say that, you know, I come from a fairly large family, and as a teacher at Algonquin College, I deal with a lot of people on a basis who do suffer from mental health challenges. And right now, I think we can all agree that we're in the middle of a bit of a crisis with what's happening with COVID. And it has really brought things to a head for a lot of families and a lot of individuals within this community. So I did want to put forth my personal opinion that I think this is a really important discussion that we are having today. And I think that within this group, we have a lot of people who have some great ideas about what it is we need to do to help people in our community. So I guess without further ado, what we could go out, what we'll do now is we have a few questions we'd like to put forward, and we'll ask each organization to perhaps address some of these questions that we have, maybe a minute or two per organization. And I did want to start off with just perhaps speaking to you, Mahmouda, is why has HCI decided this year to particularly focus on mental health, particularly with those with special needs? Mahmouda Khan, could I ask you that question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Terry, for that question. Salam and peace, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome all the panelists, our host, Lubna, thank you. And Terry, thank you so much for moderating this. To answer your question, I think because of COVID, you've actually answered for us at the beginning. With COVID, every single one of us, in our household, in our community, in our workplace, we have been hit with some sort of, needs to address this mental health. And even we're seeing more and more people with disabilities. It is still a stigma in our community, especially with the Muslim, that we want to actually address and break out of. And these wonderful organizations are doing a really great job. So because we felt within our families, within our workplace, within the beneficiaries, this is a crisis that is growing instead of reducing in number. So that's why we chose that this is a perfect time to partner with this other organization. They're really expert in what they're doing. They have the resources. So if HCI could lend out that hand, reach out to them and support them more, why not? We need to get this addressed. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Mahmouda. That's absolutely. And I think everybody universally can agree that now is the time for everyone to come together and to help people in our community who have any sort of needs for support. And we've got a lot of people in this room, in this virtual room tonight, who are going to do the best that they can to help people with that. So why don't we start with, I think we'll just go around the people in the room and we'll say, why is this topic, why should it be a major area of focus for charities to support? There are a lot of charities out there, a really particular demographic. What do you feel, in your opinion, folks? Let's start perhaps with Rabia. What is it that brings you to your dedication to equality, to justice for persons with disabilities, and particularly within diverse communities? Why is it so important for you?
It's personal. It's very personal. I've grown up in this society as a racialized woman with a disability, with a family, siblings with disabilities. So it's very personal. I want to take my lived experience, our shared journey, and bring it forward to pave the way forward for a better tomorrow for people with disabilities in this country. And I'm doing my small part. We're doing our small part. Everyone at Dean Support Services has a personal connection to lived experience, and therefore we're trying to make a difference. During this pandemic, our organization's really shown its resilience to change and evolve and continue on serving the needs at the grassroots level.
I think you've hit on something very important there. That's personal experience, Rabia, and grassroots level. I always have a problem with people saying, "Oh, I'm only one that make a difference." But as I look around this room and the people within these organizations, we're all individuals, but working together, we're very strong. So I think that is a beautiful way to come together. Sumaya, what is it for you that brings you in, particularly at this time, to support individuals within the community towards positive mental health and well-being?
Yeah, so Nasiha actually started as a peer support helpline for youth back in 2006. And, we found, just based on the data collected through the call logs, through platforms like our tech support, people are in need more than ever of it to sort of communicate some of the challenges that they're being faced with, both consistently throughout their lives, and that are just being exacerbated now in the pandemic sort of circumstance. So we're trying our best to kind of support them by adding web therapy as a medium of support, and by triaging people, because for the first time ever, they're reaching out to our helpline and portals for financial support, and wanting to be connected to local food banks. So this is sort of a really difficult time for people to navigate.
I think you've hit on some very important points. This, of course, what's happening being exacerbated, as both previous panelists said, by the COVID situation. A lot of people are now out of work, and particularly folks with families are finding themselves in great need right now. So I think you've hit on some really important points there. Let's go quickly sideways to Shaliza Muhammad Ali. Can you tell us, you're an adult educator, but you also and work within education. What can we do right now, particularly when it affects minority women and socioeconomic issues?
Thank you. I think the first thing I would say is recognize the proximity of minority women and people with disabilities to the effects of mental health, really to the effects of the pandemic as we look across the board. This population, women, people with disabilities, we're so much closer to crisis. And that is because there are so many underlying factors that were always there. And now we have the entire society being placed in a very difficult time, and it's difficult for everybody, and we recognize that. I think what's really, what's top of mind for Nissa Helpline is proximity to crisis, because we at the Help have never seen this before. We've been supporting peer care. We've been supporting for about 7 years now. And just at the onset of the pandemic, we were hit with a 50% increase in calls, something that we've never experienced. And again, what we started to look at immediately was the proximity to crisis that was really just calling our attention. So as an educator, I would say the first thing is to educate ourselves on what's happening, and then really set ourselves up in a place where we can help the most vulnerable, because again, the proximity to crisis is so much closer in these populations.
Absolutely. And as an educator myself, I recognize we're not frontline workers in the technology being used within COVID, but we are the people that deal directly, particularly with younger people who are fighting extreme crisis right now. With our next panelist, Sukaina Dada, you are a pediatric occupational therapist, and you have examined the narratives of disablement, displacement of Syrian refugees in Canada. Can I ask you, why is it so important right now that we recognize our new Canadians and people within community in this time of crisis?
I mean, it's an excellent question, and I think I'm echoing what my fellow panelists have said, that, we are seeing the health inequities, we're seeing the disparities that are impacting people with intersectional experiences, with, very different challenges. And, we here at Smile, we've been doing a lot of wellness calls since the beginning of the pandemic. We've actually just gone over 10,000 wellness calls. And in these calls, we ask people two things. One is it how they're doing, and the second is what they need. And what we keep hearing over and over again is that people are facing challenges. We sometimes hear that phrase, we're all in this together, when in reality, we're not in this together. We're not experiencing this pandemic in the same way. And so I think it's very important, to have initiatives just like this one, so that we can understand these very intersectional and very unique experiences, so that we can support people in the way that they need to be supported.
I think you've hit on a very important point there that leads me to my next question was, how are we finding out what people need? What tools are we using to assess, and how, not just how we're dealing with this now, but how we're going to deal with the fallout, the repercussions of the crisis that we're in? Maybe I'll just open up the floor to all four panelists, and because I recognize that every one of you has probably got different tools in place, but maybe there are some ideas and some new tools being implemented because of the situation we find ourselves in. maybe we could start. Shalisa, would you mind telling us how you're gathering information and how you're doing outreaches in your part of the community?
Absolutely. So Nissa Helpline is an anonymous helpline. We don't gather information from our callers. What we do gather is the central theme of the calls, the resources that we provide. So we also provide peer counseling as well as a resource support. So what we start to look at is what resources are we sharing to provide continued support. And from that, we started to see, and I think it was already mentioned, an increase for the demand for food banks. Really, we're going back to basic needs, right? So our crisis right now is mental health is being strained because of so many other economic issues. What we are also seeing is the women. So our helpline is specific to women. We are bearing the brunt of that. We're seeing it from our callers. We continue to get calls, and then even within the helpline. So in terms of resources, to answer the question, a lot of data gathering is where we're at right now. And then you're really using that data to continue on to education. It is a stream of the helpline, and using our platform to provide that education to the public.
That is phenomenal, because what I'm seeing here as a relative outsider, coming in, is that something like HCI is so important in its building of an umbrella that we can fit community groups under, because I'm hearing a lot of crossover here. We're seeing a lot of people dealing with the same issues on a daily basis. And perhaps with our other three panelists, Rabia, Sukina, or Sumaya, are there, with anonymity, of course, in place due to the nature of the services that you are supplying. And it seems to me that we are seeing the same things mirrored. We're seeing that need for food, for basic needs, basic necessities of life. Is there anything else, though, above that or beside that you're finding more often?
So Terry,
well, maybe Terry...
Rabia, please go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
So we're actually utilizing tools like interviews and focus groups, in addition to the data being collected through our helpline and text support. We're also introducing pre and post surveys with all of our programs, just to ensure that the programming is reflective of the needs of the community specifically.
Excellent. And Rabia?
Well, the individuals we serve include all forms of disability, and primarily youth and adults, as well as family caregivers. And what we're finding is, again, staying in regular contact, making those calls, being available to them is really, really key to keep understanding and appreciating the impact of emergency measures, the impact of social distancing and mask wearing, and everything that's going on. Because for people with disabilities, in fact, there's a disproportionate impact. People with disabilities have been historically marginalized in our society from the get-go, and they have been even further marginalized throughout this pandemic. I also serve on the COVID Disability Advisory Group to a federal minister. And in that conversation at the national level, the same issues emerge again and again. And we keep hearing from coast to coast to coast from people with disabilities of what the difficulties they're facing, the financial difficulties, even in the sense that your social assistance for people with disabilities is far less than what workers received at the beginning of the pandemic. So there's a recognition that the benefit that people with disabilities receive regularly is not sufficient to maintain a basic quality of life. And we saw that play out with able-bodied people. So it's not about, for us, it's really not the quantifiable contact with people, but it's the quality of contact and the continuity of service. Because people with intellectual disabilities in particular really at some level don't understand what's going on. And we need to continue serving them. And we feel that we're an essential service, in fact. So we have continued with even some level of in-person services because it's just so critical to people's physical and mental well-being.
Rabia, that is so wise what you are saying right now, and I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads in this room, and I'm sure folks at home are doing the same. I think and it's an unfortunate, situation regardless, but what has happened in this crisis is the light has been turned on, and we are seeing finally some recognition from government, from media, from the public about what has been endemic for people living with disabilities, or mental health issues forever, since time immemorial. So I'm really hoping that going forward, that acknowledgement remains in place. Which brings me to sort of my next issue. You folks in this room in particular have a lot of resources, and maybe we can take just a few minutes right now to let folks know how we reach out to each other. How do we get a hold of your services, and what do they look like for the community? Maybe we'll start with Sukina down, please.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely reach out to us. Our website is smilecan.org, and of course we have all the social media platforms. But the way that people get registered with Smile is really a simple intake form and an interview. We've moved all our services online, and just to sort of touch on your previous question, Terry, I think everybody has experienced these online challenges, especially for children in school. And then for the population that we're supporting, it's just become even more difficult. And I'll mention just one reason for that, and that is the language barriers people are having. And this is not something that's being addressed. And so we get all this information that's sent in email and on websites, and it's simply not accessible to people. And more importantly, what's really difficult is all the information that's coming out about COVID, and it's really it's really scary, and it's really stressful. And so one of the resources that we've been providing actually over the course of the pandemic is just some language supports for families, helping people go through documents and apply for funding and get some respite service. And one of the ways we've had to do that, even as a team, is to actually hire staff that speak these languages, so that we're not constantly relying on interpreters, but we're providing that information on an ongoing basis.
That is such an important point of language. Just reflecting on my own experience as a teacher at Algonquin College, I have a young student who is the only English speaker in his family, and he has to do all the shopping and everything because his family cannot communicate. And that seems, in normal times is difficult, but imagine in a time when you actually have no ability to get out into your community and reach people. So that is such an important point with the language. Thank you. That's something we very much need to be made aware of. And it's fabulous. You're supplying that. I mean, the college is at its best, but wow, that is such a great service. And I'm sure, looking around the room, the services that this group alone is providing is huge, is massive. Did anybody else want to put forth, perhaps for people watching or listening, how they might reach out to your community organizations?
We're actually accessible online. You can also check us out on our website and social media feeds. We've recently, in the past year, added a language capacity that allows us to provide therapy in Arabic. We also, over the helpline, are able to provide services in Urdu. So please, utilize these services. They're there to sort of help you navigate some of the different challenges that we all sort of experience here in a North American context. We also do wellness checks. So if you wanted to sort of register for that, you can email info@nasiha.net. And beyond that, our schedule of activities and events are through social media.
Thank you. Rabia, what are you offering? I mean, obviously a lot of community support, but is there something you'd like to put out there that maybe people don't know that your organization is offering in support?
Well, we are continuing to offer in a limited way on-site programming, one-to-one programming. That's been the modification we've had to do as a result of COVID. We're doing that on site in Mississauga. We are working towards something on site in Ottawa currently. Most of our programming has gone virtual, but we know that through virtual programming alone, there are many people that we serve to whom virtual interactions are not meaningful because of the nature of their disability. So because of that, bringing back in-person services is so important to us. We offer, again, the idea of check-ins. Our peer support has gone virtual, which is connecting way more people. So people with vision loss, people with physical disabilities, and of course, families and whatnot. So we've had a whole series of workshops and seminars and all kinds of stuff going on, right down to, filling out a health package to assist in case of emergency, including, just documenting all your health needs if there is a COVID crisis of the caregiver or of the individual with a disability, as well as even legal will preparation for some of the individuals to have documentation in place in case of a caregiver crisis. People can get in touch with us through our website, which is deansupportservices.ca or info@deansupportservices.ca. In Mississauga, they can call 905-593-3461. And I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers for Toronto and for Ottawa on the tip of my tongue, but they can find us.
People can find this is powerful, Rabia. This is such important work that you're doing. Thank you, Shaliza. I'm sure as well. You've got a lot of services that are out there in the community for as far as resources go.
Yeah, for sure. So our service continues to be a free, anonymous peer counseling support available to women across North America. Women are welcome to call anytime. It's open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've maintained the amount of hours throughout the pandemic and even now. So you're welcome to call in. Our service is, we provide that peer counseling support as an immediate need, and then we work with you to identify resources and what continuous for you. In addition, we provide education. Really, our social media feeds are full. We encourage you to take a look at the content that we put out. 100% of the content that we put out is related to the call drivers that we are getting. So we really try to make sure that we're providing content that is relevant to the community, and it's all coming out of the call drivers. If you're at home, I like to say women who call us typically don't use any type of helpline service. So, if it's a difficult time and if you need somebody to talk to, you're welcome to use the helpline service. It is free and completely anonymous.
Mahmoud, I just can say thank you again for inviting me to moderate this panel. Just looking around this virtual room, I am so humbled by the powerful women in this space and what they are doing for the community. And obviously a room full of underachievers. I mean, really, people. It's fabulous what you're doing for the community. I recognize that we've talked about a lot of positive and negative so far. And I think we need to just take a moment to acknowledge, I think, as I mentioned earlier, that there are significant gaps in what community groups can offer and what governmental supports can offer. What are some of the gaps that we are seeing right now particularly within the situation we're in right now? What are you identifying that we need more? I'll just open the floor for that question. If anybody has something perhaps that they have noticed over the last few weeks, over almost a year now, is there something that's coming up on a regular basis that, the government needs to do this, or our community needs to do more of this? Are there some gaps in the services you can offer?
So
well, again,
some emerging. Sorry, Rabia. Please go ahead.
Sorry about that. I can't see you guys, so I can't see if somebody's jumping in to speak. And when you open the floor, Terry, you open it for me.
It's always open for you, Rabia.
Absolutely.
So, the gaps that we've realized, like I said, the biggest gap that people with disabilities in this country have realized is the fact that they have been forgotten. The fact that their social assistance rates and all that kind of stuff remains the same, and yet cost of living has gone, uh, further and further up. And as a result of lockdowns and restrictions and whatnot, they're being forced to buy online. Things that we never thought were an issue are an issue for many people with disabilities. For example, online shopping. If they don't have credit cards, that's very tough for them to do. And then the whole literacy issue, the whole accessibility issue. I can just go on and on and on. At an agency level, what's become even more and more important for us is the fear of a caregiver crisis. If anything happens to a caregiver, if the family member, the parent, the mom, the dad, who looks after an individual with a severe disability or an intellectual disability, provides daily care, if something happens to them, what is going to happen to that individual? It's become harder and harder for people to get paid workers coming into their house because of supply and demand issues, because of fear of COVID-19. And so there's huge risks right now in families and potential crises that we're deeply concerned about. So the need for overnight respite and residential services, which is our vision at Dean Support Services, really needs to come to fruition now, because we need to be able to serve our community's most vulnerable members. And that's where we really appreciate the fact that HCI understands what we're about, understands what we're aiming for, and we're so appreciative that they're investing local, because for all of our agencies, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will echo this, we're the new kids on the block. And the old guard, the existing mainstream agencies get all the transfer payments and whatnot. We're forced to give a little bit of, time and gain some project funding, but that's patchwork. Most of our funding comes from direct fundraising from our community. Having a large organization like HCI step forward and recognize the work that we do and choose to invest in us, we're very appreciative of that.
Thank you, Rabia. Mahmuda, did you want to respond to that at all? What made you
for
choose
us?
These four?
Yes.
I was just going to say, what made you choose these four organizations? And I think it's exactly what Rabia's just been saying.
Actually, one of the things, like we said, we do a lot of live calls with our beneficiaries. Most of our work has been international, so we're doing a lot of weekly live calls, checking in with our beneficiaries, the orphans, the mothers in Gaza, Yemen, Syria, the different areas we have. And what we're noticing is that the need has changed significantly because of COVID. The work we did 2 years ago, we can't work the same way here. And that actually drove us to have more look at home as well, because we're at home. What we did before more Terry was distribution. So seasonally we'll do some distribution of food baskets for Ramadan, Zabiha. But we didn't, with COVID, we noticed that some of our donors were reaching out to us for assistance. And that's when it hit us that, okay, there is real need at home. Our own people, our next door neighbor are probably going to bed without, a proper meal. So it opened us room for dialogues and discussions. So we started to reach out to many local organizations, just find out about what they're doing locally. And these are the areas we noticed that you mentioned gaps. And as Sister Rabia was just saying, that after having several meetings, we found that this area is probably most neglected when it comes to funding, or even when it comes to collaboration, dialogue, discussions. So that's where we found we felt that the need is really here for the people with disabilities and mental health. And it's growing, that crisis is growing, so we need to do more. And we don't want to duplicate what's already people are doing so wonderfully, all these organizations. We don't need to hire more staff and duplicate what they're already doing. So why not just support them and collaborate and work unitedly?
Why not? That's brilliant, of course. I've seen a lot of nodding heads in this panel as both of you speak. Seems to be something, maybe Sumaya, we can go down to you now, is you were nodding and saying, yes, this is what I'm identifying as well.
Yeah, no, I absolutely unequivocally support all of Rabia's comments. We have definitely seen a gap in terms of resources and funding being allocated to some of the more mainstream agencies, but there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, especially for marginalized or racialized communities that we need to sort of be aware of and plan for, right? And so when you're dealing with community agencies who have a lived experience that Rabia has also touched on and who can speak to some of the emerging trends on the helpline, like domestic violence, like suicidal ideation, like marital disputes, like labor market integration issues, then that directly impacts the type of solutions that we can address. Rabia also mentioned a great term, resilience. And I think when we use a resilience framework in the work that we do, we're in a unique position to be able to really bank on the strengths of the families that are accessing all of our work for care. And I really do appreciate all of the work that every panelist is doing here, because I see you guys day in and day out. And, you know, oftentimes we here end up putting in twice the effort as, you know, somebody who may have more resources at their disposal, but we do the work because we're passionate about it. And so I thank you guys all for being on the front lines.
I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. I'm going to get a little, I don't want to be negative or bring it down, because absolutely the people in this room, the people in the organization, a lot of people within the community at large are working really hard to bring people together to give supports. And I have noticed personally that despite, you know, of course, a lot of difficulties people are having, there has been this desire for positivity. There's been a desire to make that human connection despite the inability to actually connect and touch each other and hold each other. And but if we don't continue, if groups like yours are not mirrored within our society, if things just go back to, quote, normal, and I've had a lot of people say, I just can't wait until things get back to how they were before COVID. There's a problem with that statement. What happens if we just go back to where we were? What happens in 3, 4 years? Maybe, Sukina, we can start with you on this one. What do you see happening if we don't learn from what's happened right now?
I mean, I think it's just going to get worse. And, you know, we're going to see people who are pushed to the margins of society being pushed even further. And unfortunately, what's going to happen is we're going to forget as a society, as a Canadian, you know, society. And right now, the pandemic has forced us to talk about health inequity. It's forced us to talk about all the inequities that we see in our society. You know, when we call for data amongst racialized persons, we're talking about these inequities. When we call for what's happening to persons with disabilities, we are explicitly trying to find out. My fear is when we go back to this, quote, normal, then we'll stop having these conversations. And these conversations are the very thing that is driving support and driving change. So I hope we don't stop talking about it. And I'll just take a moment to echo what Rabia said earlier about HCI support. You know, supporting local initiatives and supporting groups that have a connection with pockets of people is so important, because these groups, they you know, are supporting people who are amongst those that are pushed to the margins of society. Without supporting these small groups, sometimes people don't hear the information. They don't get that, Sumaya touched on that mental health support that they need. So it is so critical to support these local groups, but it's also so critical, Terry, to keep having these conversations. We have to be outspoken. We have to be loud about it, and we cannot stop.
I think that's exactly what I expected, but I'm very glad that you're so articulate and can put that into words. Shaliza Mohammed, we'll go to you for a second. Do you see within your organization some solutions, how we're going to keep this conversation open? And as Sukaina is suggesting, the need to continue to address and keep people's eyes open, figuratively, to the problems that we finally started talking about. Shaliza, are you seeing anything that we can do to keep that conversation going?
So the first thing I would say is that as we look into going back into society, as we look into reintegration, what we have already seen at the helpline is that this in itself is causing another mental health, issue to come across. So we have people calling in with anxiety for the first time because now they're going back to work for the first time. And what we're seeing is that as much as we try to go back, the underlying issue of mental health, of dealing with mental health, to go anywhere. So before we get to solution, I really want to use the time to acknowledge the fact that as we go back, mental health will continue to rise. The importance will continue to rise. The issues that we face day in, day out, even our kids going back to school, if we have to start using public transit again, all of those things are going to trigger emotions, and we're going to have to be prepared to deal with that. And what we're already seeing at the helpline is first time depression, first time anxiety. As we go back, we don't, I don't want to sound negative, but we don't see the mental health issues going away. And then in terms of solution, we've been doing this for 7 years, and I think what's really important is to have a support system around us, to have communities like all of the panelists here, to have HCI say, I see you and I recognize the work that you're doing, and continue to buffer all of these organizations as they provide that service. Mental health is very, very, it's you can't see it, right? And it's one of the biggest challenge with getting the attention on mental health. So as we go back, it isn't going to go away. In fact, it's going to increase, and it's going to be even more difficult to see. So we're really going to have to champion ourselves to make the effort to address this issue, though we can't see it.
I think you're speaking absolutely, and I'm not trying to make this about me, but I lost a brother to suicide and a brother-in-law who died by suicide. And both of those deaths affected, obviously, the community, the family, and you never get over that kind of thing. And I think that the work that HCI is doing and all of the groups in this room is so important because of exactly what you said. This is an invisible enemy that we are fighting, mental health issues. And as you said, which I think is very wise, so these you're saying is a lot of folks now are dealing with issues who have never dealt with them before. And maybe a positive we can take away from this is that now you have seen the face of that. Please do not forget it. Do not just let it go away when you go back to your 9 to 5 and park your car in the inside garage and walk up to your office. So is there anything among this group that you can see how we can help the community become more aware moving forward? Are there ways that people can get involved with the work of these communities to help keep that conversation open, to keep that door open? What are some things, let's move to, Sumaya, let's start with you. How can people get involved? How can we help?
Yeah, I mean, by volunteering or learning more about social services. We need more counselors. We need more resources in the social service sector that have an understanding of the lived experience and the cultural and linguistic competencies that we rely on at Nasiha. Beyond that, I think if we can forge sincere alliances with different partnerships that can be access oriented and family focused. I think having a multi-level solution approach to solution will help to kind of nurture strengths that exist within our community, and I think those strengths are what are going to bring us through these challenges.
I think exactly, multi-pronged approach, multi-level approach seems very wise. Rabia, how can people get involved with your organization or even just in the community to help people and to keep this door open?
Well, again, we encourage our community institutions, our organizations to comply with accessibility standards. We're available to support them in becoming accessible, especially in the virtual world. It's really important that the virtual materials that they put out, the platforms they use, be accessible for people with disabilities and follow the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act standards, at least here in Ontario. And there are going to be some federal standards rolled out as well that grassroots small organizations may not be obligated by, but should adopt the spirit of and the intent of. For Muslim organizations, I mean, recognizing that our tradition in Islam is about inclusion. It's about recognizing our diversities and embracing those diversities. People with disabilities were not historically marginalized at the time of Prophet Muhammad. So it's really important for us to revitalize that tradition in our places of worship and in our institutions. That's one big piece that our institutions can do. At an individual level, it's important for people to build relationships with people with disabilities, especially people with intellectual disabilities. All they're looking for is a smile, and a smile in Islamic tradition is charity. So, be generous with your smiles to people with disabilities. Offer to help. Don't insist on helping, but offer to help. Be kind. I think we have to build, people keep talking about, and the government keeps talking about building back better. I don't think it's about building back, building forward better. We are living history. We are making history, and we have to learn the lessons that it has brought forward to us right now and implement those lessons so that tomorrow is barrier free. Tomorrow is inclusive. Tomorrow is accessible to everybody. It's equitable and it's just. So that's what we're striving for. We welcome people reaching out to us. We welcome people reaching out to people that they know to connect them to us. And a big message would be, we are generous. As a community and as a society, we are a very generous society. We give a lot globally. We have to equally share locally.
Mm.
If you ever decide to start some sort of social movement, I'm your first person who's going to follow you, Rabia, with a
I am going
phone.
to call you. I am in a social movement, Terry. I will call you.
Well, I'm your latest convert. That is such a hopeful and speech, and so conscious. Your diligence and your conscientiousness is so admirable, Rabia. Thank you. And speaking of smiles, Sukena, how can folks get involved with your organization and help at a level that you're working at?
So I would say, first things first, check us out, go online, give us a call, send us an email, check out the work we do, believe in the work we do. I always tell people, if you want to know about us, check us out, meet the folks who we're working with. And we want people to believe in our projects and our programs and our services. But the other way that people can help is in whatever you're doing, whether or not you're connected to Smile, whether you're an educator or a frontline worker, whatever you're doing, to learn about some of these issues that we're talking about today, and then to make sure that you're challenging them in your own space. So whether that's in your family space, your neighborhood space, your community space, your workspace, whatever it is, but challenge it in however you can. Because I think that, the way that our organizations are going to make a significant impact is that people will, think about what we're doing, maybe learn about some of the concerns, but then go back into their own spaces and do whatever they can to challenge these inequities.
You're absolutely right. We must take individual responsibility and not always rely upon organizations to do that. You're absolutely right. Lisa, how are you welcoming new people to your organization, volunteers and such?
So right now we have a huge call out, a need for volunteers in many capacities. Do check our website. There's lots of positions that we've posted. We are encouraging professionals, young professionals, to come join us. We do need that talent. Whether you're looking into peer counseling or any other support roles, we are, there's an open call to come help us because we need the help. The other piece that we really want to mention is to check in with your family. Specifically, we like to say check in with the woman in your home, because it's important to have open conversations. Women in particular, it's very difficult for us to ask for help. And we know right now it's a difficult time for all of us, but in specific to the women in our families. So our ask is that you do check in, and if you need to share the number, please feel free to share the number, but do check in with the women in your family.
Now, Mahmouda, as we draw this panel to a close, we're hearing a lot of things. We're hearing about inequities, discrepancies. We're hearing about people who are marginalized. But I have to say that what I'm hearing most from everyone in this room, hope. I'm hearing hope. And that is something that I think we all need in this time. And I just wanted personally to say that it is folks like you and Human Concern International who are really leading the front of this community work. Not just within the Muslim community, but within the Canadian community at large. So I think that what I'm hearing is hope. Does that sound right? Is that what is in all of our hearts in this room? Yeah? Mahmouda?
Absolutely. Terry, absolutely.
Every time I meet you, but...
No, you're absolutely right. Hope definitely is... what's getting us going, our hope, our faith, the resilience. And, this, for me, from my personal experience with Human Concern International, my hope comes from the beneficiaries. When we speak with the people who've been living in refugee camps and still see how happy they are, how, grateful they are for the tent with the little bedding that they have, it makes us realize how resilient they are. And that's what gives us more the power and the passion and hope as well. The people that you've heard from today, Terry, these are the heroes of our community. They're fighting for the rights of certain, community members who are not able to stand up, maybe get up and speak for themselves. So these are our heroes. I'll share here actually 2 stories because you're talking about how you can get involved. Obviously, volunteer. And another thing is speak to people, talk to people, reach out, even if it's your, as Lisa was saying, your families, your neighbors, knock on their doors, speak to them. That's exactly how we're learning what we need to do to bring people out of crisis and put them toward, move them towards sustainability. So I'll share one story. We were talking to our beneficiaries who are receiving free bread. We have a charity bakery in Yemen, which provides 40,000 breads for free of cost. And our partner was introducing us to some of the beneficiaries. And this one man, he was a teacher. He has 4 daughters. And of course, due to the crisis and what's happening, the conflict, he lost his job. And his next door neighbor, the father disappeared and the mother passed away. So he took in the 2 orphans. Even though he's suffering, he's not able to provide for his own daughters. And then, he had a motorcycle. So he started thinking, what can I do? I have a motorcycle. So he started doing some delivery work with his motorcycle until he got kidney problem. And now he's not mobile at all. So, when you hear stories like that, which we're hearing on a daily basis, it shows you like the power these people have within themselves. Because even now in his bed, he's asking out, what can I do to get up and provide for my daughters and these orphans? I don't want free bread from HCI. I want help. So that got us talking to him, and we're like, okay, we're looking into education project in Yemen. You're a teacher. You have education background. Help us, right? So a beneficiary became part of our project right now. Similarly, mothers that we spoke to in Syria a couple of days ago, Gaza, whose houses were damaged. They're living with holes in roof and wall, and for 25 years, the mother was actually crying and making so much dua, so much prayer for our donor, because she's saying, after 25 years, this place feels like home. My kids are not going to bed crying, and they're waking up with a smile in their face. So, these are things we don't even think about. And when you interact with them and hear their story, it makes you realize how blessed we are. We have the advantage to become their voice. We have the advantage to, reach out to these people and build that bridge between them, what they need and what we can provide. And that could only happen when we all unite, share ideas, we have dialogues with each other, because everybody has some experience and expertise that we can benefit for. So when we started having, before launching our local program, we started having, like I said, we made calls for proposal to many organizations. We had meetings with many organizations. And after that, we picked these 4 partners because they are fighting not for themselves, not to make themselves a hero, not to benefit themselves, for the community, for the disadvantaged, community members. So these are, like we said, we are all about investment. HCI is all about moving people from crisis to sustainability. We do need to invest today so that our children could have a better and more inclusive society in the future.
Thank you. I think that, my friends, is a very profound sentence to finish on. I'll hand the reins back over to Lubna Said, but I did personally want to thank you again for having me as a part of this panel. And I'm very inspired. And dialogue and hope and communication. Thank you, all of you. Lubna.
Okay. Thank you so much, Terry. I must say you've covered, I believe, all aspects of, what Human Concern, how they're partnering with the 4 other charities, and how, we'll be working on our mission to end this and, come to some sort of a solution. So thank you so much, Terry, for moderating. And thank you so much to our 4 panelists. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we have a lot to achieve, and let's look for a better future. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.